I'm Elex Michaelson, and welcome to a very special edition of The Issue Is from Colusa County, California. All this behind me is the home of the four-term governor of California, Jerry Brown.
I'm very happy that I'm here.
The former governor driving us around his ranch that his family has owned since the 19th century. We talk hot topics, including crime. You feel like there are not enough consequences right now for the crimes that are happening.
That's what I think.
His advice to Governor Newsom.
One strategy is don't be in the news so much.
The budget.
Arnold Schwarzenegger had a deficit of $60 billion. The next deficit is going to be just like that.
And what's the one question that stumps him?
You've stuck me. You have stuck me. I'm trying to think.
The Issue Is starts right now.
Broadcasting across California, California's only statewide political show. You're watching The Issue Is.
Jerry Brown and his dogs, Colusa and Callie, are taking us on a ride we'll never forget.
I just want to make sure my foot is on the accelerator.
As he has his whole life, Brown has the pedal to the metal. So this is all your property? We traverse up the mountains of his 2,500-acre ranch, about an hour northwest of Sacramento. You feel totally at home here.
Yeah, I do. I feel I have enough elbow room.
Yeah. On the day Gavin Newsom became California governor in 2019, Brown and his wife Ann moved out of the governor's mansion they restored and into a home they recently built here. They call it Mountain House 3. This
is Mountain House 1.
Brown's great-grandfather, August Schuckman, developed the first mountain house here in 1878. It had become a stagecoach inn for horseback travelers. Jerry's grandmother, Ida, grew up here. Jerry's father, Pat Brown, a California governor himself for 8 years, wasn't a fan of this terrain.
Is it too hot and too many rattlesnakes? Now, that's true. There are rattlesnakes here. But now we have air conditioning. We have lithium-ion batteries.
Now almost all the power here comes from solar panels.
That's the well.
All the water comes from a well and rainwater.
We're not connected to the city.
Brown is living completely off the grid.
I'm very happy that I'm here. This is probably the best time in my life, no question.
Driving here, you get a sense of just how remote it is. In this town, there are way more cows than people.
And it is rather conservative. Most people here voted for Trump, voted for the recall, are not vaccinated, but are certainly good neighbors.
So what do they think of you?
I don't ask them that, but they're very friendly.
You would say that even compared to the time that you were governor, you're happier now? This is the most happy you've ever been?
Yeah, I would do that. Well, I have to say, when I was in the Maryland primary in 1976, running for president, and I beat Jimmy Carter, that was very exciting. That was a happy moment, short-lived, however.
Yeah.
And moments in the governor's office were very exciting.
Growing up, Brown did not envision following in his father's political footsteps to become the California governor. For a while, he wanted to become a priest. At 18, he entered the seminary, studying with Jesuits. Ultimately, he decided to go in a different direction. While studying to become a lawyer, he'd listen in on his father's private discussions as California governor and was inspired.
My heart started pumping. I was so excited, beating. So I said, okay, that's it. Politics is exciting. I'll get through, pass the bar, become a lawyer. I'll do that in some way.
In 1974, Brown became California's youngest governor ever, taking over from then-Governor Ronald Reagan, when Brown was just 36 years old. Looking back, do you think you were ready to be governor at 36?
I know a hell of a lot more now.
He'd served 2 terms and leave office after 2 unsuccessful runs for president.
When you're a governor, you think, why not be president?
Right.
And that was not a good thing on my part. I mean, running for president in 1980 was a very dumb move on my part.
Following an unsuccessful U.S. Senate race in 1982, Brown traveled the world to rediscover himself. Some friends called it his wilderness years. He'd learn about different cultures firsthand and meet spiritual leaders like Mother Teresa and the Dalai Lama. Don't you think that maybe some of that time away, though, made you both more interesting and better the second time around?
Well, you see more of the real world. You have to reflect on things.
Yeah.
So it's good to be governor and then to step away and say, oh, what the hell was I doing here? And you get greater clarity.
Brown returned to elected office with successful stints as Oakland mayor and California Attorney General. Brown was then elected California governor once again in 2010.
Full of energy, full of creativity, and ready to serve.
He'd leave office in 2019 at 80 years old, California's oldest governor ever. He's now 83.
I know a lot now, at 83, compared to what I was knowing at 38 running for president.
Even though Brown's home here is remote,
but I'm not just here looking at cows or chasing the elk away.
he's constantly on Zoom.
It'll come down to how people are feeling about the state.
Following the news daily, trying to get a sense of where voters are at.
Whatever the mood is, you can't buck that. I just have to tell you that. I'm a practical politician, and you got to go with the flow.
So if you can't buck the mood of the country, how do you see the mood of the country right now?
Well, the mood of the country is pretty anxious, especially if all these people are taking anxiety drugs.
Brown is concerned by images of rising crime in California.
You've heard about the redistribution of wealth. We need a redistribution of incarceration. In other words, the ones, they send people to prison for 25, 50, 75 years. Often, after a few years, they're ready to go. They're rehabilitated. And if you have a reentry program and some kind of control and help, you can work that. But on the other hand, now we got all these people committing break-ins, snatch and grab, shooting up heroin on the street, and they just walk out. So we have a lot of, if we took the long-termers and got them out a little quicker, and we took the short-termers, we put them right on the street, and we put them in, and then we put them in and give them some drug treatment and training. But you got to have the carrot, but you got to have the stick. Mm-hmm. And the stick is, you go steal a car or something, you're going to spend some time. You don't have to spend 10 years. Put them in for a month. If they do it again, put them in for 3 months. And you need a graduated sense. And we have something called drug court. And there's a judge in Santa Clara that works with people who have drug problems and mental health problems. And they come in, he puts some of them in jail, but they get drug treatment, then they go out. If they screw up again, he pulls them back in. He may go in and out 15 times. Some people need a lot of supervision, but you can't supervise by saying, what would you like? Would you like, I don't ask them if you want heroin, but they say, would you like treatment? And the guy said, no, I don't want any treatment. I think we need, between lock them up in state prison and just, rotting in county jail, we need intermediate programs. They used to have farms where people work, have to get out there and milk the cows and feed the chickens and get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Try that for 6 months. But I would say that the misdemeanor crime, they say, well, we don't arrest for misdemeanors. Why not? It's a year in jail. If you get 2 misdemeanors, that's 2 years. I don't understand why they say we have to wait for a felony. I think the misdemeanor is a good charge. It was used for 100 years in California. And then secondly, you've got to have a system of training, education, drug treatment, rehabilitation. So you can't just put people in a cell and they just sit there. And then they sit there with a bunch of other characters who can't get their lives together, and you make them worse. And eventually they get out. So you have to intervene in their lives, but you can't just ask permission. You've got to push people we have to push people, that's all.
So it sounds like you feel like there are not enough consequences right now
Yes.
for the crimes that are happening.
That's what I think.
Do you
But I also think you just can't throw people that county jail in downtown LA. Yeah. That's not any rehabilitative experience. We need alternatives. We used to have it in this state, when my father was governor and all the previous governors, there are 25,000, maybe more people in mental hospitals. Now we said, no, they let them all out. Well, where are they? They're on the street. Well, it didn't work. So we're going to, there's a lot of things we need to do, and a lot of it is politically unpalatable.
Right, because right now you really don't have the legal ability to lock a lot of people up because of mental illness, right? Because of LPS
and that had its own problems.
Yeah.
And I don't minimize those problems, but leaving people on the street in a tent next to a freeway, that can't be right.
I mean, do you think Prop 47 is working?
First of all, I did not support Prop 47. I supported 57.
Right, I
because
know.
what I was worried about is people rotting in prison for decades, and I wanted to
Right.
find a way for they to get rehabilitated.
And there hasn't been as much controversy about that recently.
No.
But Prop 47's been in the news
47.
a lot. Yeah.
Well, that's why I say they can rest for misdemeanors. They say, well, you have to steal $950 to get a felony. Well, if you steal $200, that's a misdemeanor. Why can't the courts decide we want to target retail theft or home burglaries? And if you get caught, we're going to put you first offense 6 months, 9 months, whatever, 2 months, do something. Right now, they give you a ticket and you book in and you book out. That's because we have no bail and no consequences. So that can't work.
Up next,
What would your advice to Governor Newsom be?
Jerry Brown's surprising advice for his successor and an ominous warning about the budget. Stay with us. You're watching The Issue Is. As we continue to explore former California Governor Jerry Brown's property in Colusa County, I ask about the current governor.
Do you talk much with the governor?
No.
No.
Even though Gavin Newsom served as Brown's lieutenant governor for 8 years, they rarely spoke.
Has Gavin Newsom ever been here before? No.
Generational and transformational budget.
Brown says one of the biggest challenges for any governor is the budget.
It's very hard to spend a lot of money in government without doing stupid things. And the reason is there's so many lobbyists and so much pressure to do things that it isn't just rational judgment.
When Brown first entered office in 2011, there were record deficits.
California is counting the days before officials say it goes completely broke.
They know California's bankrupt.
When you have a deficit, you have to do something.
Brown cut spending and temporarily raised taxes on the wealthy.
State spending is now at its lowest level in decades.
When Brown left office, California had a massive surplus and record rainy day fund.
The state has come roaring back.
In 2021, Governor Newsom announced record surpluses and recently told us 2022 will be similar.
And I'm claiming this now for the second year in a row. Historic budget surpluses.
It looking like California's going to have a big surplus again in January.
Well, one of the reasons you have a surplus is the tax increase that I proposed was for 7 years. And it's supposed to or 8 years, it's supposed to expire. But if it had expired, we'd have a more modest surplus and we'd be more disciplined. Instead, they renewed it.
Yeah.
And so now we have all this money.
So you think we should have let that tax increase sunset?
That was my proposal.
Yeah.
I did say it would be for a limited period. That was my belief. But that's not what the legislature wanted.
What do you think we should do with this surplus now?
I think that's a very difficult problem. It's very difficult to spend money well, particularly when you know it's not going to be there in 2 years. And we have to be. That's the history of California. The money flows in and then it goes away. Arnold Schwarzenegger had a deficit of $60 billion. The next deficit is going to be just like that. Was it next year? Probably not next year, but in the next 5 years. And then we're taking on all these obligations, and so we'll be deeper in the hole. Governor Newsom is doing something very smart. He's putting money into one-time expenditures.
What would your advice to Governor Newsom be?
Well, I think he's doing that. He's being very quiet these days. Watch how you spend that money, because it can. It looks okay now, but 2 years, he's going to be reelected. I feel confident about that. And then I think that second term can be difficult.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, because then you have
Right.
if the money runs out. Also, the longer you're in and the more exposure you get, the more they get tired of you. That was one thing that I noticed after my first 8 years. I think that people had seen enough of me. And the problem is when you get on television, you're on television. And the next story may be a snatch and grab or some debacle, some bad, fire, murder, and you're in the news, and the news is bad. So one strategy is don't be in the news so much.
Brown says we should increase spending dramatically on education. Even today, Brown sees the need firsthand through his work as chairman of the Oakland Military School, a school he helped to found.
Teachers have a very tough job. I see that in my school. We should be doubling the salary of teachers. People who don't perform, you should have a way to remove them. So money, accountability.
Well, how do you know, the teachers union would fight a lot of that, right?
Well, they'd love the money, but
Right.
they might not love the increased authority I would give to the leaders. If you double teacher salaries, that's a permanent commitment forever. And that would take a revenue stream. And a revenue stream would take a lot of public support. And I think that would be hard to generate.
Speaking of spending, Brown defends his support for a high-speed rail system that was intended to connect LA to San Francisco, but is instead focused on the Central Valley.
Why don't we have more of that done? Why aren't we seeing LA to San Francisco?
It's bold. You need 180 billion, 90 billion. But the Chinese have 20,000 miles of high-speed rail. We can't, when you drove up here on I-5, you can't have all these trucks and all these cars. You're going to have to rehabilitate the train system, and you don't want to do it at 60 miles an hour. You ought to do it at 180 miles an hour. And you can do that, and you can do it with all renewable energy. Now, the trouble is you got to lay your money out in front. Right. And people have been unwilling to do that. So I think it's a good idea. It works in Spain, it works in France, it works in Japan, but it's a tough sell right now with some of your friends in LA.
When we come back, Jerry Brown talks climate.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a reminder that Mother Nature is worth fighting for.
And shares his concerns for President Biden.
There's a lot of challenge here for the Democrats.
This is the small room that houses the batteries that power Jerry Brown's ranch in Colusa County.
So the power all comes through this place.
His whole property powered by the sun. Brown doesn't have any gardeners or staff here. It's just him and his wife. The grounds here are mostly untouched.
This is a reminder that Mother Nature is worth fighting for, right?
Yeah, well, I think it looks pretty good.
Brown has been warning about climate change since he first served in the 1970s. He says talking about the issue isn't easy.
It is a problem because it's abstract. It's invisible carbon dioxide molecules going up into the atmosphere, forming a heat blanket and making things warmer and thereby disrupting the climate. That's pretty abstract.
Brown currently serves as president of the California-China Climate Institute. He says private industry leaders like Elon Musk and Tesla are making a difference.
We need the private sector to push us, push the politicians. And when you say the politicians, California is doing a lot. But unless President Biden and President Xi can form a real partnership, we're not going to get anywhere.
Do you see evidence that there will be, or are we close to a deal between President Biden and President Xi?
No, not. They're talking, but China is so different than we are. And they're number two, they're Avis and we're Hertz. And they want to be number one. And no, we want to be number one. So somehow that conflict has to be worked out without blowing the world up.
Brown has known Biden since they both became national figures in their 30s back in the 1970s. He's concerned about the president's slipping poll numbers.
There's a lot of challenge here for the Democrats.
How much do you pay attention to approval ratings?
Well, not anymore. No, I'm joking.
What would your advice be to President Biden and the Democrats right now?
Well, he's got this bill that he's trying to get through. I make whatever compromise I need to get it. And I keep trying to work with the Republicans because even if they don't agree with you, I think it communicates a good sense that we're trying to work for the country. And I think that's where Biden is, and I think it's a powerful message.
Is compromise, is deal-making even possible in this current climate?
Doesn't look like it. The base wants red meat, and that red meat's going to destroy the country because even if you get the Republicans take over now, then Trump gets in, or somebody like Trump, and then the left's going to go more left, and it's going to go back and forth. America can't run that way, and I think America is facing a real crossroads on governability. Can it be governed?
Up next, Jerry Brown reflects on the past and look towards the future. Plus, the one question that stumps him.
You've stuck me. You have stuck me.
After nearly 50 years of making legislation, Jerry Brown has a new hobby, making olive oil.
This is the Mountain House olive oil. You don't see that in the store yet, but maybe in a few years.
Former staff from the governor's office volunteer to pick the trees with him and pick his mind.
What would your advice be to the next generation of leaders?
I'd say study some history. One thing about being older is you remember more stuff. I think you got to look at what didn't work, and then you find more space for what might work.
So if we're studying the history of you,
Yeah.
what is the most important thing that you want people to know about the history of Governor Jerry Brown?
That's a good, I haven't thought, I'd have to think about that.
The question genuinely seems to stump him.
Yeah, I don't know that I have, you've stuck me, you have stuck me. I'm trying to think what.
He reflects for several minutes.
I was willing to try things, try new things. What I learned is that the more you do something, the better at it you get. You can't avoid mistakes.
As for Brown's legacy,
I don't like to spend too much money, and I felt that way about tax money. And then secondly, climate, the environment. California is a beautiful state, and to maintain the biodiversity, the beauty.
Beauty showcased at his ranch.
When you see this,
Yeah.
what goes through your mind?
Well, I never could imagine this when my grandmother told me about it. I didn't know it was this beautiful, it's a part of California.
Brown hasn't published an autobiography, but points to other books about him: The Browns of California by Miriam Powell and Man of Tomorrow by Jim Newton.
Nice view.
Even in his 80s, Jerry Brown spends most of his time thinking about tomorrow.
What's the future of California look like?
Well, I think the future of California is invention, reinvention. We don't know what it's going to be. There are a lot of crises, but California has always been able to come through.
Our thanks to Governor Brown, and our thanks to you for watching this very special edition of The Issue Is. I'm Elex Michaelson. We'll see you next time.